In my opinion, this is the best chassis that is available right now for No Prep RC. Now, when I first saw and heard of this No Prep RC thing, I fell in love right away. You know, grab your car, hit a parking lot, and you're good to go. The issue that I found right off the bat was that the base that's being used for all of these cars is short course trucks. Now, the first thing that came to my mind when I heard that the short course trucks was going to be the base, the first thing I thought about was, my God, what are they going to do about the caster? Because the short course trucks have what's called kick up, and that's when you see the angle of the bulkhead is on the bulkhead is on an angle there. The amount of angle that's there is called kick up, and that kick up creates caster. And the caster, when the wheels are pointed straight, does nothing at all. But as soon as you start giving any steering input, the wheels, instead of turning like this, side to side, what happens is they turn on an angle. And so they cut like this and they cut like that. And what happens when you cut on an angle is, instead of it just, steering in the direction that you want to go, it basically tries to cut into the corner. This is great for off-road racing and off-road driving. When you have high caster, it lets you keep the wheels relatively straight or to a static camber setting when going straight. But as soon as you make a corner and you steer into it hard, the steering gets a lot of bite from the scrub radius just digging into the pavement with the tire, and it's basically makes for a hard carve. And this is not what we want in drag racing. Now, most drag race cars, if you look at the Pro Mods, they all have very limited suspension, if any at all, and the movement goes up and down. This is critical. When you have caster and you have on top of the camber angle that it applies the more you give steering, as the shock compresses, the wheel is going forward and backwards. So it changes the wheelbase depending on how high you have the ride height. So the lower the car is, the shorter the wheelbase is. The higher the car is, the longer the wheelbase is. These are not things that are ideal for drag racing. When it comes to short course, off-road, dirt type stuff, taking jumps, going over doubles and stuff, that's great. But when it comes to drag racing, we actually don't need any of that. Another issue that I came to mind right away was that the shocks that are used for the Slash and for the Bandit and for these short course trucks are off-road shocks. They're basically shocks designed to take impacts from jumps. So you have big bores and you have a lot of travel, and it's basically designed to bring the bottom end, the back end down and smack the bottom of the chassis when you land the jump. And this, while great for off-road and taking jumps, does us nothing in drag racing. The thing that it does actually do is, because the shocks sit so high and are so big, they weigh a lot, but they're also very high up, so they cause the center of gravity to be raised up. Now, when it comes to steering your way out of a correction, the higher the center of gravity, the more the car is going to be leaning into the corners and stuff, leaning into the corrections. The more lean you have into the correction, the more upset the chassis is going to get, and the more it's going to want to carve. So everything about the short course design in this chassis is great for off-road and making those corners and having the front steer you around and stuff. But when it comes to drag racing, none of that stuff is really beneficial. Now, when I just knew I had to get into this no prep stuff, the first thing I started looking for was a chassis, an aftermarket chassis that addresses a lot of the issues that I was having with the short course base for this kit. And I have to say, Steve at RCRI This guy is obviously he's if you look on his site, he's not just building chassis for no prep. He's also building chassis for pro mods and stuff. And it seems to me like he's taken a lot of the field work that he's done in the pro mod stuff and applied it to the no prep stuff, because there's some details and there's some features of this chassis and of the other NSCRC chassis that I don't see any other aftermarket company applying to their kits. And I hope if at the end of the day, I don't want to pull this out the bag to have another one of those brands start copying him. But at the end of the day, I mean, these chassis are on the market, so if they do, it's on them. It's not my fault. Now, basically, the main feature of an NSCRC chassis, aside from a few other details that I'm going to go into, but the main feature that is shared between the Street Eliminator Pro Kit and the Black Widow kit and pretty much all the NSCRC / base chassis is the spun around or flipped front bulk. Now, what it does is, as I showed you before with the Bandit here, with the bulkhead on the front way, the way it actually bolts up has that kick up. Now, it's not, all the holes are not used for the Bandit when you're putting it on there, but on the NSCRC chassis, he's spun around the front bulk and used the holes that are not used to regularly mount the Bandit chassis and mounted it to the NSCRC. And what this does is it eliminates all the kick up, which then eliminates all the caster. So now when you notice the shock, the suspension arms going up and down, they go up and down. They don't go forward and back. This is absolutely brilliant. Now, the NSCRC chassis, both the Black Widow and the Street Eliminator chassis, both have the flipped front bulk, and this is just absolutely brilliant. So this is one of the key features and one of the most important things, important features in the NSCRC chassis that I don't see on any other chassis that's being put out for Street Eliminator. Now, when it comes to making corrections, you want to be able to steer your car out of the trouble. You don't want to be forced to, as soon as you make a correction, your car starts carving and going all over the place. That's not what you want. You want your car to be able to take small inputs, steer the car correctly, and smoothly regain direction. So I believe that this type of setup is better than any of the setups that have an angle on the shocks, basically forcing caster to create camber as you steer for corrections. Now, the next feature that I'm going to talk about is the second feature on this chassis that is specifically for drag racing, and I don't see any other chassis that have this particular feature just yet. Now, mind you, I've not seen every single chassis out for Street Eliminator, so there might be another brand that has the flip front bulk. There might be another brand that has this feature also. I just personally haven't seen them or don't know them, so if you do know of any, please post them inside the comments, and I'll definitely check those out. But as far as I know right now, this is the only chassis that has these two features. Now, the second one I'm going to show you is the turnbuckles that go to the top plate. Now, this is a dual plate chassis, so there's a bottom plate and a top plate. And if you'll notice, there's two turnbuckles that go from the shock tower mount to the top of the top plate. Now, the top plate is actually not fixed to the transmission at all. So the only point that really the transmission, shock towers, and entire rear assembly is connected to the bottom plate is through the bottom screws over here. So what that ends up doing, So what that ends up doing is creating a lot of flex inside the chassis between transmission or the rear assembly and the two plates. So this point right here becomes a high flex point. If you don't have these bars on, you feel it right off the bat. There's a good degree, a good amount of flex going on there. Now what these two turnbuckles do is they allow you, like, number one, when you put them in, they create the mounting point from the top and it squares it up so that it's solid. It doesn't move. There's no flex, any wobble, except that with these two turnbuckles, you're able to apply tweak into the chassis. So with them all mounted up and everything is slacked right now and everything is, just set the way it is, you can adjust this turnbuckle to start pulling on this side of the chassis, and you can adjust this turnbuckle to start pushing on this side of the chassis. And this is going to tweak the chassis. So if you're running out of wedge adjustment and you still need to get the car to go straight, or even if you want to reduce how much wedge adjustment you have, you can actually apply tweak to the chassis, which will change how the weight transfers from the front to the rear. And this will, this should significantly make an impact on how the two rear tires load up. And whenever you're impacting your grip, it's gonna change how the car goes. So this is actually, there should be a means to adjust the car to keep it going straight. Now, another cool feature of this chassis, I don't know if other chassis have this to this extent. I know other chassis do have a similar type feature, but when it comes to the battery position, you have basically, it doesn't get any better than this type of setup. With the center post right here, you can remove that. So that post can come right out. And what that'll let you do is move the battery from all the way to the front, right behind the steering post, all the way to the back, pressed right up against the transmission. So when it comes to adjusting the weight balance of the RC, you have a good amount of room for where you can, for how you can move that battery forward or backwards to get the weight balance set up exactly the way you want and adjust that weight balance to the hit. Other than that, I mean, these are pretty much the only real features that are going to be on a chassis. How you position the battery, and how the front is mounted up. The key feature here being, up and down travel, zero caster, no camber when you start steering. So this is a real proper drag car setup. Also with the ability to tweak the chassis for how the weight hits the rear end. Again, another feature that's really good for drag car racing. Now when it comes to the RCRI chassis, there's another kit that's become very, very popular, and that's the Black Widow chassis. Now, the Black Widow chassis has the exact same front end assembly as the Street Eliminator Pro kit that we have right here. The key differences between that chassis and this one is that the top plate is fully braced and connected, which doesn't make all that much difference. There is some variation to how the steering servo is mounted. With this one here, in order to allow us to move the battery all the way to the front, we have a top mount servo plate. So the servo basically mounts up here, or it can go inside here if you decide to mount the battery back there. But by having the servo mount up here, this allows us to move the battery all the way forward to get more weight forward. So that's another feature to this chassis, is that servo position to allow you to get that battery all the way forward. But another key one is that the top plate has a larger space between the lower plate and the top plate. What this does is actually makes it more solid. The closer the two plates are together, the less solid they are, the less boxed they are. So this type of setup right here should overall be more rigid than what the Black Widow is. And the Black Widow doesn't have the tweak adjustment on the chassis. So the way the Black Widow finishes up on the back end coming off the transmission it's directly hard mounted to the transmission with a plate for the ESC, and you don't have the ability to tweak the chassis the same way that you do with this one here. So I mean, these key differences, I believe, make this chassis actually potentially better than the Black Widow for No Prep RC. Now, don't bite my head off if you're running a Black Widow chassis and you're killing the game where you're from. I believe that if you get the Street Eliminator chassis and you set it up and you get it worked out, the two chassis are not going to be one so much better than the other. Just, I believe that this chassis here has a few more adjustment features that could give you a competitive edge. The key feature of the two chassis is the front bulk being flipped, and that's going to make the bulk of the difference. And that basically just puts both chassis at the top of the game when it comes to actual drag cars, not a short course truck style chassis that, you know, people put big wheels on, some skinnies up front, and call it a drag car because it's got a wheelie bar on the back. Now, a great thing about RCRI chassis is that being the base chassis itself, RCRI has a lot of great complementary components to go with it. We have the RCRI 9-inch wheelie bar, which is stunning. It's very rigid and very stiff, and with the RCRI motor plate and custom carbon fiber bracing for the RPM wheelie bar mount, that it will be available from RCRI. At least the top one is already available. Potentially the bottom one might be available in the future, but that's not confirmed just yet. I mean, honestly, with the way it works and how good it is, everybody should be requesting that this bottom plate get made. So these are some complementary parts that you can get from RCRI just to make the kit that much, just to make the kit, you know, that much more complete. There's also the front bumper. However, there is a problem with the design in the front bumper right now, which is it's designed for a different type of drag racing where the front wheels are smaller. So there might be a redesign, not 100% sure. Hopefully I'm requesting it, and cross our fingers we get a redesign of this that'll push the actual bumper out some, and that will just make the entire chassis complete. There's a few more components that I have to get for the kit to complete the whole setup. I do have my motor coming in, and I do have the ESC and all the electronics ready to go. So there will be more videos going over the suspension, going over the arms that I use, the shocks that I use and why, going over the transmission and what I have inside the transmission, and why I'm going with the things that I'm going with as well. Yeah, that's basically it for now. So that's basically the raw details on the chassis. If you have any questions, feel free to post them inside the comment section. I'll try to reply to everyone. Keep watch out for more videos on the no prep cars. I just want to make sure that I've gotten everything checked out over here. Oh yeah. Now the reason that these braces are so important is because when it comes to the RCRI chassis, one feature that you need to be aware of is that the chassis actually cuts in at the back end. So when it comes to the NSCRC aluminum wheelie bar mount, you can't actually run that with this chassis unless you add metal plate to the bottom or do some custom arrangement to fix it to the chassis and make it more solid. The guys that I see do that basically will have a metal plate at the bottom that they clip on the NSCRC wheelie bar to, and then they'll take turnbuckles and they'll connect them from this point on the wheelie bar mount up to a point where they drill on the shock towers, and that creates the brace for them there. That boxes everything up. This setup here with the carbon fiber top brace, like so, and the carbon fiber lower brace, like so, basically both bolted directly to the transmission. What this does is it squares it all up where there is zero flex. I mean, you can see there is nothing, no side to side, no up and down, no nothing. That is as solid as it can get. And you don't have all the extra weight of the turnbuckles, metal plates, or need to drill anything into the shock towers. So what I've done is I've already gone ahead and given all the reasons why this kit is the most drag specific chassis that is out right now, in my opinion. I also want to address some of the issues that some people have had with the chassis. Now, most of the issues that I've found other people have had and that I've also had myself, I've been able to work around them or get a fix in there with some washers or some shims, something like that. So this is basically a pro level chassis. You're going to have to expect to shim something out here, shim something out there in order to get everything to line up properly and to have the kit set up the way you like. The kit is built in a way that it can be very versatile. You can have the servo on this side, you can have the servo on that side, you can have the steering linkages low side or top high side. You can have the Y plate up high or down low. There's a lot of different ways that you can build the kit to the way that you like. So the kit's very versatile. Now, I'm just going to address a couple of the issues that I've seen some people have. First off, one is that the kit doesn't come with these washers here. So basically what happens is that you have exposed screw thread between the Y plate and the front bulkhead. And because it's not actually threading down the Y plate onto anything solid, what happens is this is a bit of a weak point. Now, it's not 100% a bit of a weak point, but it seems like one to me. So what I've done is I've added some washers between the Y plate and the bulk to be able to secure those screws there nice and tightly, so it forms a solid boxing of the Y plate to the top plate section there. Another issue that people have had is that the space between the top plate and the bottom plate is only 25 millimeters. So if you have a 25 millimeter battery pack, that's an extremely snug fit, and you're going to have to like wedge it in there. It's a pain in the ass to get in and out of that. This is a very simple fix. You just need 1 millimeter washers, and you put one underneath all the plates here, all the posts, and that's going to move the top plate up 1 millimeter. So that will allow you to have clearance for the battery without it being wedged in there. Or you can get some of the newer thin profile batteries that are 23 millimeters, 19 millimeters, and they'll fit in there perfectly. Another complaint that I heard was that people didn't like the way the front steering setup actually connects into the RC. I don't seem to have any issues with it. As you can see, I've got it shimmed up quite a bit, and it keeps the post elevated in the air. And the shims allow me to move this setup up and down a little bit if I need to. I have clearance on the Y plate for the steering there, so it doesn't cause an issue. The travel is limited by the steering carriers, so that there's actually no contact between those two over there. So it's nice and perfectly set up. Also, what other complaint did I get from people getting this chassis? Oh yeah, well there was the fact that if you use the RPM motor guard / wheelie bar mount, there's a lot of flex because the back end is cut out. see here, I already said that before. I think that the fix that I have here with the brace, directly bracing the mount to the transmission, is a solution that works very well, and at the same time looks very good. It's very, very solid. Can't beat it. So those, I think, are all the issues that I've heard people have with this chassis. Other than that, I mean, when it comes down to it, this is, in my personal opinion, the best chassis on the market right now for Street Eliminator. It's the only one that is this. It's the only one that's designed at this level specifically for drag racing. There's features on this kit that are for drag racing that other kits just don't have yet, and pretty soon they're going to start coming out with them. So might as well get ahead of the game now and get yourself familiar with a proper drag chassis. Oh yeah, I also need to touch up on one more detail, is that when it comes to building these RC and me promoting any brand like the RCRI chassis and components or the R1 Works Digital 3 ESC, I don't have any sponsors. So every part that you see, I've had to pay for. I don't get anything for free. I haven't gotten any testing parts or any discounts on parts to put them in a video or something. None of that. If I'm promoting a part, if I'm telling you that I think this part is worth your time and attention and worth your consideration, that means that's what I truly believe myself. And I try very, very hard not to suggest or tell someone to purchase or to get any part at all if I don't think that it's worth their time, worth their money. If it's not worth my money, it's not worth your money. Every single part here is, if I tell you I like it or if I'm promoting it, that's because I believe in that product 100%. Yeah, so that's going to be basically the video for the chassis. Now, as I said, I'm going to be making more videos for all the different components that have gone into the build. And later on, there's going to be, videos for some of the other RC that I got in the shed. So please, like, subscribe, and share. I'm going to try and create as much content as I can that, hopefully is helpful to other people trying to get into the same kind of stuff. And just doing crazy, stupid stuff with RCs. So please, if you do like this build and you want to keep up to date with how it goes and all the different things that go into it, please like and subscribe to be notified for all the videos when they come out. Thanks a lot for watching. Peace.